Clint Eastwood is 95 years old, long past the age when most actors retire. Yet he remains active, still directing and preparing new films. In 2024 he released a new movie, and in 2025 he was already in production on another. His endurance raises a question that whispers around Hollywood. What keeps him going? Many believe the answer lies partly in the hidden corners of his personal history, including the daughter he had no idea existed until she walked into his office in 1989, uncovering secrets buried for decades. DNA tests many years later verified the connection, and the revelation opened a window into the private life behind the iconic face of American cinema. Eastwood's story began far from celebrity lights. Born on May 31, 1930, in San Francisco during the Great Depression, he grew up in a family that followed work from city to city. He bounced between schools, rarely settling long enough to feel rooted. At 6 he nearly died of pneumonia and diphtheria, spending weeks inside an iron lung. Defying doctors' expectations, he recovered and transformed into a tall, resilient teenager. He drifted through school and eventually walked out for good after a dispute with a teacher. With no diploma, he took whatever work he could find. Hay baler, lumberjack, odd jobs, saving a few $100s that bought him his first car and ignited a lifelong love for engines and racing. Drafted during the Korean War, he remained stateside as a swimming instructor. While returning from Seattle on a military aircraft, the plane crashed into the ocean. He swam miles through brutal surf to reach the shore, an experience that later shaped his instinct for tension and survival on screen, most notably in Sully. In 1954 he attended a talent scout event in Los Angeles, sang a tune from Guys and Dolls, and was offered a modest contract. He appeared in brief uncredited roles, barely scraping by, and in 1956 the studio dropped him. He refused to quit, working nights and taking acting classes. His break arrived in 1958 with the television series Rawhide. Fame was gradual, and he often struggled under stress, smoking heavily until ulcers sent him to the hospital. Yet the audience saw something authentic in him, something spare and tough, and his popularity grew. In the background, his personal life was complicated. He married Maggie Johnson in 1959, but other relationships shadowed his private world. Unknown to the public at the time, Eastwood had fathered a daughter named Lori in 1954, who was adopted and not acknowledged until decades later. He found unexpected fame abroad with A Fistful of Dollars in 1964, a low-budget Western filmed in Spain. Paid barely more than pocket change, he watched the film explode internationally. With its sequels, he became the face of a new kind of Western, hard-edged, quiet, iconic. This success fueled the creation of his own production company, Malpaso, in 1967, built on a desire for autonomy and better deals than studios had offered him. Soon, he was negotiating his own contracts and shaping his films with increasing control. The early 1970s transformed him from star to legend. Dirty Harry in 1971 became a cultural phenomenon, not only for its box office power but for the magnetic realism Eastwood brought to the role. He delivered the famous line, "Do you feel lucky?" with improvised cold steel. He performed dangerous stunts himself and carried a real .44 Magnum for authenticity. 2 years later he directed High Plains Drifter, even overseeing the construction of an entire town for the set. The vision was darker than typical Hollywood fare, and while critics debated the tone, the film established him as a director unafraid of shadow and grit. He continued pushing boundaries through the 70s and 80s with films like The Outlaw Josie Wales, overcoming production battles, union fines, and even IRS troubles that forced him to sell assets to stay afloat. In 1980, Any Which Way You Can became a commercial hit, though the tragic mistreatment and death of the film's orangutan later cast a painful shadow over the production. Just a few years later, in 1986, he ran for mayor of Carmel by the Sea and won overwhelmingly. His term mixed charm with controversy as zoning disputes and development disagreements stirred tension in the quiet coastal town. Then came Unforgiven in 1992, a project he had held onto for over a decade until he felt old enough to inhabit the role. The film swept the Oscars, taking Best Picture and Best Director, and redefined the modern Western. Yet his personal relationships continued to generate turmoil. His long partnership with Sandra Locke collapsed publicly, leading to legal battles that exposed painful allegations about their years together. His later marriage to Dina Ruiz ended in 2014 after long separation and disputes over custody and finances. As a director, Eastwood moved with remarkable speed. Films that typically take months he shot in weeks. He avoided endless takes, preferred natural performances, and consistently finished under budget. His efficiency influenced younger filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, who admired his no-frills approach. Through the years he directed acclaimed projects such as $1 Million Baby, Mystic River, Bird, Invictus, and Gran Torino, many of them personal in tone and stripped of unnecessary spectacle. He also wove music into his work, drawing on his love of jazz, performing piano, and even composing scores. Beyond the screen, he restored Mission Ranch in Carmel, turning it from a near-condemned property into a thriving inn that preserved local history. He donated land to conservation efforts and supported charities quietly, without publicity. He remained a pilot for many years, though a fog-related emergency landing later made him more cautious. Still, he never let fear stop him. At nearly 90, he starred in and directed The Mule, driving his own high-speed scenes. In 2024, he released Juror 2 at age 94, editing it himself at home. Audiences filled festival seats, even when he chose not to attend, applauding a career that stood as proof of endurance and craft. The revelation of his daughter Lori resurfaced long-hidden complexities. She had been given up for adoption and raised without knowledge of her father. When she finally stood before Eastwood in 1989 with documents in hand, the truth reshaped the story of his private life. The confirmation years later stunned Hollywood and revealed how much remained unsaid behind his steady public demeanor. Now, with more than 40 directing credits and multiple Oscars, Eastwood remains one of the last living legends of old Hollywood, who continues to work. His career spans 6 decades, marked by independence, risk, and an unyielding belief in storytelling. He once remarked that the less secure a man feels, the more he directs. Perhaps that restless energy kept him moving forward when others slowed down. While many filmmakers fade in their late years, Eastwood stands almost defiant, believing experience gives him a sharper edge rather than dulling it. At 95, he works not for necessity but for purpose. He resists the industry's obsession with remakes, insisting that originality matters more than nostalgia.